Okay guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about dun, 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 plants that I've killed. So I am going to start with like a disclaimer. It's not always your fault, honey, okay? Sometimes these plants come to us from God knows where, and how they've been treated and how they were raised and how they were born and all that. Like, you don't know all of it. So it's not always your fault, but sometimes it is. So let's start off with like the first plant that I can remember killing in my collection. And it was a Photonia nerve plant. It was a pink one. It was, I think, my first or second plant that I ever picked up, and I bought it from Home Depot. And if you know anything about this plant, you know that it's dramatic. Like, it speaks and tells you when it needs water, and it literally just like droops all the way down, like the most dramatic one that I've ever seen. And I just waited too long to water it, and it just didn't ever perk back up after the last watering. So I had to say bye, because I was just like, oh my gosh, it's like 10 o'clock at night. I'm not gonna get up right now and water this plant. And basically that was like its doom. Like, I just waited way too long to water it, because all the other times I was like, it perked up like nothing. So this time it's gonna do that too. I was wrong. And that was my first plant. So I learned that if it's speaking to you, listen, act immediately. And I have purchased a Photonia since then, and that one for some reason is just like way more easier to care for. Sadly, RIP to my first Photonia. Second plant that I remember killing was a peperomia, like the watermelon one. I don't know like its scientific name, but for the record, I have killed two. The first one I ordered from Etsy, and I think this was like a mistake. I was a new plant parent, and I don't know why I thought it was like a good idea to order from like Etsy that I didn't even know who the seller was. Like, I can't tell you who it was, like how many they sold, what the reviews were, or anything like that. But I think it was like $15 for like a small one, and it died immediately, like arriving. So I don't know if it was like my mistake, if it was the shipping, if it was like where it came from, but that plant, RIP to the plant. That was my first one that I killed. So then I went to a nursery in Houston, and I saw that they had some. So I picked up a second one, because I was like, let me redeem myself, okay? Like, whatever. Ended up killing that one too. But I was watching somebody's video. I don't know who it was, but it has to be like a plant YouTuber. And they were basically saying like sometimes these like peperomias are very prone to root rot. Like, sometimes these plants might already have it and you just don't know. So then you bring it home and like you might add to the root rot, and then it just dies. So that's what I mean, that sometimes it's not your fault. Like, you don't know in what conditions the plant is already in, and then you bring it into your home, and if it passes away, it might have been you, but it might have been other factors too. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then I'm trying to think. There is a plant that I don't want to say like I killed. I think I just gave up on the plant. It was a Calathea medallion. I believe that's the name. And I'll insert a picture if I have one still of it, but it was just like up and down, up and down. It was an emotional roller coaster with this plant, because when I first got her, fine, dandy, everything's great. And then I started to notice webbing, which I found spider mites. So I treated it for spider mites. So obviously the spider mites damaged like the leaves, and there was like some really beat up ones, but then it was putting out like a ton of new growth. So I was like, okay, she's fine. Like, she's fine. Like, these are just gonna be damaged and I'm cool with that. But then she sent me mixed signals is all I can say. So then again, with spider mites, treated her, and then it was kind of like the same thing. Like, a couple of the leaves are bad, so I would trim off the really bad ones, and then new growth would come in. And then the third time was the time that I was like, all right, I'm done with this plant. Like, I put it outside, it was fine, I treated it again, but then it was just looking super sad and I was just totally over it. And then I found a ton of soil mites. So I don't want to say it died. Like, it didn't die on its own. I murdered it. Like, I basically just chunked it into like the wooded area next to my house because I was so just done with that plant. Like, so that one was on me. I mean, also I have heard that I think that type of calathea is just prone to spider mites more, or pests in general, and it was just going through it. But I think it was the fact that she was just sending me mixed signals that I was just like, okay, which one is it? Are you gonna live or are you gonna die? I did kill a Brazil philodendron. How? I can explain to you how, but it's just kind of like, girl, you killed a Brazil? Like, those are easy plants. So I think one, it was like one of my beginner plants. So I immediately repotted it, which wasn't necessary. And then I tried to force it into a small, cute little like cement pot that I had picked up when I went to go visit. If you're from Texas, well, if you know the show, it's the Fixer Upper people, Joanna Gaines and Chip Gaines, and they have like a whole little place in Waco. So I went and I purchased some plant stuff, and one of them was like a cement pot, and I basically forced that plant to fit inside, and that was the downfall. So I basically killed it. And if you saw one of my previous videos in my repotting, I talk about how I took like the last couple leaves that were on that Brazil, and they're not doing so good. Like, I propagated that in February and they're barely growing, but it was because like I took the last couple leaves off of an already dead plant. Like, when I mean dead, like the top portion of it was dead. And I just wanted to save the last little bit. And I think that's why that little plant hasn't grown so much. But I think that's it. I have not killed any other plant. The last one was like the calathea that I just decided to murder on my own and give up with and tossed it into the woods. But the other ones, it's been a little while since I've killed a plant. But nonetheless, be gentle with yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself. If your plants die, it could be because of you. It could be because of other factors. Oh, let me explain one thing. So there is one plant that I have propagating in water, but who knows how like that's gonna turn out, like if it ends up rooting or if it doesn't. But it kind of goes along with like, you don't know how you're getting these plants. I picked up a Rhapidophora tetrasperma from a nursery in Houston, and the same day that I brought it home, I just noticed a bunch of like fungus gnats, and I was just like, I wonder if this is like from an old plant or a new plant. But I had put the new Rhapidophora tetrasperma like on my nightstand, so I noticed it was just, they were coming from that area. So then a week goes by and it was a bunch. Like, anytime I like kind of like moved in that area, there was just a bunch popping out. Like, I had never seen it that way. So it got to the point where I was just like, oh hell no, this plant is gonna like infest the rest of my plants, and I'm not about that, and I can't deal with that. So I ended up taking off the soil and I don't know why, I just didn't do like a good check the first time. So I potted it in new soil, and then I started to notice like a week later that like the tips were browning. And I was like, oh crap. I was like, what is this? I went to my Instagram peeps, my Instagram plant community, and they're like, I think you need to check the roots. That looks like root rot. Sure enough, basically all of the roots were root rot. All of them. There was like one good strong root, but all the rest were like all mushy and black and root rotted. And I was just like, darn it. So basically, there was no way that I could have done that in a week. Like, that plant came that way. So, quick story, basically saying like you just don't know all the time how your plants are gonna come. So I would definitely like just look at your plants, see if it's healthy, check for pests, check for like maybe the quality of the soil too. You just don't know, but also don't put pressure on yourself because these are living things and there's so many factors that play into it that they could just decide to give up one day. But on a positive note, thank you for watching, guys. If you like this type of video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in my next one. Bye.